Once upon a time, there was a small girl who loved the strands of waste that perched on the top of her cranium. Not in a vain Carly Simone way, but more a Tripping Daisy Sonic Bloom type way. And at the beginning of each dark period, on a small rock near a gigantic ball of plasma, the small girl would run a round object that looked quite similar to the member of the Rhethazonidae family through the collection of waste on the top of her cranium. It was a fantastic time that caused many synapses to fire in her nucleus accumbens. Conversely, this small girl did not receive an increase of dopamine in her nucleus accumbens when consuming calories that contained a high amount of fiber, vitamin A, C, and E. This reaction was greeted with dismay by her genetically similar caregivers, whose prefrontal cortex required the little girl to consume these calories even though she received no dopamine from the action. Every 360-degree rotation of a small terrestrial planet, third in order from a medium-sized ball of plasma in the ever-reaching nothingness of space, our small girl put up a great resistance to the consumption of such vitamin-laden calories, flavoring instead calories higher in protein, sugar, and fats, which according to common studies at the time were not a wholly devastating issue, but for her caregivers was not desirable enough. For numerous rotations around a medium-sized ball of plasma, the prefrontal cortex of the little girl's caregivers processed different ways to increase their offspring's caloric intake of vitamin A, C, and E. Until one day, their prefrontal cortex came up with such a grand idea they were sure their genetically similar creature would have no choice but to increase her vitamin intake. The idea the caregivers came up with was to create a lie. Now, even at the time this little girl was around, lies were popularly considered to be a pastime of adulterers and members of the ruling elite. Lying was not something the more pedestrian population would admit to engaging in. However, the caregivers looked to history and found an exception that was first proposed in 380 BC by a human who has been long considered robbed of his mortal husk, but whose writings are still popular, with people spending a great deal of time and currency studying the interactions of humans on a macro level. This individual proposed that a lie could be noble in nature if the end result of the lie served a greater good. Now, our little girl's caregivers decided that they were going to tell their mutual collection of DNA that a recent development in a philosophy called science discovered a causal correlation of 1.0 that losing the waste on top of a person's head is related to insufficient amounts of vitamins A, C, and E. When our little girl's temporal lobe turned the waveforms generated by her caregiver's mouth into a recognizable idea, she was devastated, to say the least. How was she going to balance the dopamine received from the care of her waste with the lack of dopamine consuming fiber, vitamins A, C, and E? As she stared down at the calories, thoughts of being bald flooded her brain, wondering if maybe being bald would free up time to enjoy other parts of life, like swimming or writing that novel she always wanted to, but spent too much of her free time messing with her waist. It began to look like life was going to actually get better if she would just lose her waist, and all she would have to do was forego something that she received no pleasure in consuming anyway.